ballroom smelled like white roses and money. Nora felt it before she saw it. The shift in the air. The way the crowd near the entrance went just slightly quieter. The way her spine prickled the way it always did before something in the NICU flatlined. Cole was on her left hip. Maya was on her right. Both children were warm and heavy and real, and Nora kept her eyes on the elevator bank straight ahead because she was tired and her feet hurt and she just needed to get them to the car. She did not look up. She should not have come tonight. June had called it an opportunity, the St. Regis SF Charity Gala for Pediatric Care, a room full of donors, a chance for the ward to be seen. Nora had said yes because June never asked for anything, because the twins' babysitter had canceled at 6:47 p.m. and she had no backup, and because some stubborn part of her still believed showing up mattered. Cole laughed at something, a chandelier, maybe, or the sound of a piano drifting from the far end of the hall. He reached up and grabbed a fistful of Nora's hair. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, bud." And that was when she looked up. Reese Calloway stood 12 feet away. He was in a charcoal suit she had never seen before. She had never seen any of his suits. That was the point. That was the entire point of the last 16 months. And he was standing with a woman in a white dress who had her hand resting inside the crook of his arm like she owned the space. Like she had earned it. Nora's feet stopped moving. Cole's grip tightened in her hair. The ballroom kept going around her. Laughter, clink of glasses, a waiter asking if she wanted champagne. But all of it went underwater. Reese turned. Their eyes met across 12 feet of marble and candlelight and 16 months of silence. Silence. 3 seconds. Then Cole looked up at the man across the room. The baby's eyes, gray-blue, startlingly pale against his dark lashes, locked directly onto Reese's face. Reese Calloway, the man who controlled half the private capital in San Francisco, the man who had not blinked in a boardroom in 11 years, stopped breathing. The woman in white turned to see what had stolen his attention. And Fletcher Gaines, standing 4 steps behind Reese's left shoulder, saw everything. And for the first time in 16 months, his smile did not reach his eyes. Takirptit me until the end of this story. Because in 4 hours, everything in this room will be different. A man who thought he knew the truth will discover he was handed a lie. A woman who survived alone will have to decide whether survival was enough. And the person who built the wall between them, who smiled through every dinner and every boardroom and every quiet Tuesday while 2 children grew up without their father, will not walk away from this night unchanged. I need you to understand something before we begin. This is not a story about a powerful man choosing a woman. This is a story about a woman who chose herself for 16 months straight, who worked double shifts with a breast pump in her locker, who ate cold leftovers at 2 a.m. over a sink while 2 babies slept, who did not once reach for her phone to call the number she still had memorized. And what happened when the world finally caught up to what she had already built? There are 3 questions you need to hold tonight. Why did Reese Calloway disappear without a single word? What did Fletcher Gaines do with the message Nora sent that night? And when the truth comes out, all of it, including the part that Reese has been carrying alone for 3 months, will it be enough? I promised you a happy ending when you clicked on this video. I keep my promises. Love always wins here. But first, let me take you back 16 months. Let me take you back to a woman who got up every morning not because it was easy, but because 2 small people needed her to. And that was the only math that mattered. Let me take you back to Nora. She had a habit of leaving 1 light on in the kitchen before she went to sleep. Just one. just enough to see by if one of the twins woke crying at 3 a.m. She had started doing it when she was still pregnant, alone in the apartment, telling herself it was practical. She had never admitted that the light was also for her. 16 months ago, Nora Callahan's alarm went off at 4:58 a.m. She had set it for 500 since nursing school, but she always woke at 4:58, 2 minutes early, as if her body refused to be caught off guard. She sat up in the dark of her Sunset District apartment, listened for the twins, heard nothing, and got up anyway. That was Nora. She got up anyway. She had 32 pediatric patients on her roster that week. She knew all 32 names, all 32 room numbers. Which ones liked the lights dimmed, which ones needed the door cracked. She knew that the 7-year-old in room 14 only ate the crackers if they came from the blue box, not the green one. She knew that the infant in room 9 calmed down if you hummed slightly off-key. Perfect pitch made him startle. These were not things in any manual. They were things Nora learned because she paid attention. She paid attention the way people do when they understand that the small things are actually the only things. Her vulnerability lived there too, in that same quality. Nora trusted her instincts about everyone except herself. She was the woman who sensed when a patient's vitals were about to turn before the monitor beeped, and the same woman who had spent 2 years wondering why Reese Calloway had ever looked at her twice. She was not flashy. She drove a 2019 Toyota Camry with a cracked left taillight she had been meaning to fix for 3 months. She drank her coffee black from a thermos that said UCSF on the side because it had been a gift from the ward, and she saw no reason to replace something that worked. She wore her copper-red hair pulled back with a blue plastic clip that matched nothing, and she did not care. What she protected, fiercely, quietly, completely, was the hour after the twins fell asleep. 1 hour. Just hers. She would sit on the kitchen floor sometimes, back against the cabinet, and read. Marcus Aurelius, Toni Morrison. A battered copy of Middlemarch with her own notes in the margins. That hour was the proof that she still existed outside of the roles she carried. She was good at her job. She was a good mother. And she had loved once with her whole chest. Not carefully, not strategically, but fully. That was the thing about Nora. She did not love in pieces, and when Reese Calloway had walked out of her life 16 months ago without a single word, what broke was not just her heart. It was her ability to believe that showing up fully was ever safe. She had known something was wrong by the silence. Not a hostile silence. Not the kind that comes after an argument. This was a disappearing silence. The kind where someone simply stops returning space to you, and the air where they used to be goes cold. It had been a Thursday, October 14th. Nora remembered the exact date because it was the same day a 4-year-old named Eli had been discharged from the ward after 6 weeks, and Nora had cried in the break room for 4 minutes. The good kind of cry. The kind that means something worked. Before washing her face and going back to the floor. She had texted Reese that evening. Just 3 words. Good day today. He had read it. The 2 blue checks confirmed it. He had not replied. That night she waited. She made dinner, pasta, nothing fancy, the kind of meal that means you expect someone to come home. He had a key. He had held that key for 7 months. At 11 p.m. she covered the pasta and put it in the refrigerator. At 2 a.m. she understood. She texted once more, longer this time, honest in the way she was only honest at 2 a.m. She told him she did not know what she had done, but she wanted to understand. She told him she was not angry, She told him she was scared. She pressed send and put the phone face down and did not sleep. She did not know, would not know for 16 months, that the message never arrived. That somewhere between her phone and his, Fletcher Gaines had ensured it vanished. What she knew was this. By morning, his number went to voicemail. By the following Monday, a quiet legal notice arrived confirming that the lease Reese had co-signed on her behalf for the apartment had been released. Professionally, cleanly, without personal contact. It was the act of a man closing a file. 2 weeks later, she took a pregnancy test in the UCSF employee bathroom on her lunch break. She sat on the floor for 11 minutes. Then she stood up, washed her hands, and went back to her patients. She never called him. Not because she did not want to, but because the lease notice had been the clearest possible message. And Nora Callahan had learned a long time ago not to beg for what should have been freely given. The hardest part was not being alone. She had been alone before. The hardest part was the moment, 6 months later, when Cole looked up at her with gray-blue eyes that belonged to someone else entirely, and she realized she was going to have to explain that, someday, to a child who had done nothing wrong. Nora did not run. That surprised her later, that her first instinct was not flight. Maybe she was too tired for flight. Maybe the twins were too heavy. Maybe 16 months of getting up at 4:58 a.m. had stripped away every reflex except the practical ones. She turned toward the elevator. She pressed the button. The doors did not open fast enough. Nora. His voice had not changed. That was unfair. Everything else had. Her apartment, her body, her understanding of what she was capable of surviving. But his voice was exactly the same. Low, steady, the kind of voice that filled a room without trying. She did not turn around. "The elevator is coming," she said. "Please don't." Cole, apparently unaware of the situation, said, "Duh," and reached toward the man behind them. Silence. 2 seconds. Nora's eyes closed. Reese stepped around to her side, not blocking her, not touching her, just appearing in her peripheral vision, and she saw his face for the first time in 16 months. He looked like a man who had rehearsed composure so many times it had become its own kind of wound. His jaw was tight. His eyes went from her face to the twins and back again with the precision of someone running numbers they did not want to confirm. "How old?" he said. It was not quite a question. 14 months. She kept her voice flat. "The elevator is taking a while." "Nora, don't." She finally looked at him directly. "You do not get to say my name like that. Not tonight. Not after 16 months of absolutely nothing." Reese Calloway, the man who had not been silenced in a boardroom in 11 years, said nothing. Maya made a small sound and pressed her face into Nora's neck. Cole was still watching Reese with the open, unself-conscious curiosity of a child who does not yet understand why the adults around him are so afraid. Reese looked at Cole. Something in his face cracked. Just slightly, just enough. The elevator arrived. Nora stepped in without another word. She pressed the lobby button. Reese put his hand on the door to stop it from closing. "I need to know," he said quietly. "I need you to tell me." Nora looked at him. This man who had been her whole world for 2 years, who had vanished without explanation, who was currently wearing an engagement ring on the woman waiting 30 feet behind him. "I know," she said. "You'll get the DNA test. You'll get everything you need legally. But tonight you let these doors close." He let the doors close. And as the elevator descended, Nora leaned her back against the wall and realized her hands were shaking. Not from fear, but from the effort of standing that still when every part of her had wanted to collapse. Declan Marsh had worked for Reese Calloway for 9 years. In that time, he had handled 4 federal inquiries, 2 hostile acquisition attempts, 1 attempted kidnapping, and more situations that did not have clean names than he cared to count. He was not a man who was easily shaken. Tonight, he was shaken. He had seen Nora Callahan twice before in his life. Once, 18 months ago, leaving Reese's building on a Wednesday morning with coffee in both hands, laughing at something on her phone. And once in a photograph that Fletcher Gaines had placed on Reese's desk 16 months ago. A photograph accompanied by documents, timestamps, and a carefully constructed story about corporate espionage. Declan had believed the documents at the time. He had stopped believing them at month 4 when he pulled the phone records himself and found an anomaly, a text message from Nora's number that had been received by a Calloway Group relay server and rerouted. Not blocked. Rerouted. Someone inside the organization had access to that relay. The list of people with that access was very short. Fletcher Gaines was at the top of it. The problem was evidence. What Declan had was a technical irregularity, not proof of intent. Fletcher had been at Reese's side for 19 years. The man had 9 layers of cover for everything. Declan had spent 12 months looking for the thread that unraveled it. Tonight, watching Reese's face in the ballroom, watching the way Cole's gray eyes mapped directly onto the Calloway family line that Declan had known for a decade, he understood that the window was closing. If Fletcher moved first, Nora was in danger. Not physical danger. Fletcher was too smart for that. Legal danger. Financial danger. The kind that arrived as paperwork and felt like walls closing in. Declan pulled out his phone and sent a single message to a secure number he had not used in 6 months. I need everything on Gaines. Tonight. He looked across the ballroom. Fletcher was already moving toward his own phone, his expression smooth and unreadable and slightly too controlled. Declan knew that expression. It meant Fletcher was already building the next version of the story. The question was whether the truth could move faster than the lie. And in Declan Marsh's experience, lies had a 16-month head start. Nora did not sleep. She put the twins down at 9:30, stood in the hallway outside their room listening to their breathing settle, then went to the kitchen and sat with a glass of water she did not drink until midnight. She was calculating. She was very good at calculating. It was the same skill that made her an exceptional nurse. The ability to assess a situation clearly, identify variables, prioritize actions. She did not flinch from bad numbers. The numbers tonight were very bad. Reese had her face now. He had seen the twins. Whatever he chose to do with that information, she would have no control over the timing or the method. She knew enough about him, about the world he operated in, to understand that he would not simply let this sit. She also knew that she was not in a position to fight whatever came next. $52,000 in medical debt from the twins' premature delivery. Rent at $2,800 a month on a 1-bedroom she had converted with a curtain. A car with a cracked taillight. A job she loved that was currently marked for restructuring. She was not without resources. She had June. She had herself. But she was tired. She was so tired. Her phone buzzed at 11:14 p.m., unknown number. She almost ignored it. Then some instinct, the same one that woke her 2 minutes before the alarm, made her answer. Miss Callahan. Male voice. Careful. My name is Declan Marsh. I work for Reese Calloway. I need you to understand that I'm not calling on his behalf. I'm calling on yours, and I need about 10 minutes of your time." Nora looked at the kitchen light she had left on. "Mr. Marsh," she said, "it's 11 p.m., and I have two 14-month-olds asleep 20 feet away and a shift that starts at 6 a.m. "I know," he said. "I'm sorry for the hour. What I have to tell you, I think you need to hear it before Fletcher Gaines makes his next move, because he will make one. He already has." The words settled like cold water. 10 minutes, Nora said. She did not know yet that by morning, a story would be circulating in the administrative offices of UCSF. A story about a nurse who had appeared at a Callaway Group charity event with children she was claiming were the CEOs. A story designed to look like an embarrassment. A story that had Fletcher Gaines's fingerprints all over it, even though his name appeared nowhere. The hospital called at 7:52 a.m. Nora was already in scrubs, had already dropped the twins at June's apartment 2 blocks from the ward, had already drunk half her thermos, and mentally organized her patient rotation for the morning. She answered on the second ring. "Nora." It was Dr. Anand, the ward administrator. His voice had the particular quality of a man delivering something he did not want to deliver. "We need to ask you to come in early, not for rounds, for a meeting." "What kind of meeting?" A pause. "Administrative review." She knew what that meant. The meeting lasted 40 minutes. 3 people sat across from her. Dr. Anand, the hospital's HR director, and a woman from the legal department, whose name Nora did not catch because she was too busy keeping her face very still. Someone, anonymous, the HR director emphasized, anonymous, had filed a complaint alleging that Nora had attended the St. Regis Gala the previous evening, not as a representative of the ward, but as part of a personal agenda. The complaint included photographs taken at the event, a detailed account of an exchange between Nora and Reese Callaway, and a letter that suggested Nora had used her position at UCSF to gain access to a high-profile donor event for personal purposes. The letter was unsigned, but used medical terminology so precise that it read as internally sourced. "We have to take this seriously," Dr. Anand said. He looked deeply unhappy. "Until the review is completed, we're asking you to take administrative leave. With pay," he added quickly. "This is not a termination. It is a process." Nora looked at her hands in her lap. 12 years? 12 years of 4:58 a.m., alarms and cold coffee and holding children's hands when their parents could not be there, and learning which box of crackers the 7-year-old preferred. "How long?" she asked. 2 to 3 weeks. She nodded once. "I'll need to let the day shift know about room 14. He has a medication adjustment at noon." Dr. Anand blinked. Yes, of course." Nora left her badge on the desk. She walked to June's apartment, collected the twins, sat in her car for 4 minutes in the UCSF parking structure, and did not cry. She had learned long ago that crying in the car was a luxury with a time limit, and she had 2 children who needed lunch. She drove home. She changed Cole's diaper. She made Maya's bottle. And then she opened her laptop and began, very quietly, to build the thing that Fletcher Gaines had not accounted for, a paper trail of her own. Reese had not slept either. He sat in his apartment on the 38th floor of a building he owned, looking at the bay through floor-to-ceiling glass, and thought about gray eyes. Cole's eyes. Reese had a photograph from his mother's house, a picture of himself at 10 months old, sitting on the kitchen floor of the house in Marin where he had grown up. His eyes in that photograph were gray-blue, distinctively, identifiably gray-blue. He had not needed a DNA test to confirm what he already knew. He called Declan at 1 a.m. "I need everything you have on Nora Callahan," he said, "and I need to understand what happened 16 months ago. The real version." Declan was quiet for 2 seconds. "I've been working on that for 12 months. And I have enough to show you a pattern. I don't have enough to take to a court yet, but Reese—" A pause. "I talked to her tonight, after the gala. She didn't know I was going to. I needed her to know what was coming." Reese stood up from the window. "You contacted her?" "Fletcher is already moving. He used an inside channel at UCSF this morning. She's been put on administrative leave. He went after her job." Reese's voice had gone very quiet. That quiet was not calm. "Yes. Fix it. Reese, I can't just— I will appear before the UCSF Board of Directors in person, if that is what is required. I will put the Callaway Foundation endowment on the table. I will make it impossible for them to proceed with any action against her. Set it up. That might take 48 hours. Then start in the next 20 minutes. He hung up. He stood at the glass for a while longer. He thought about the way Nora had stood in that elevator, holding 2 children, looking at him with a steadiness that should not have been possible from a woman carrying what she was clearly carrying. He had expected anger. He had not expected that particular quality of dignified exhaustion. The look of someone who had been surviving so long, they had simply stopped expecting anything different. It made something in his chest feel like a structural failure. He did not know yet, would not know for another 6 days, that there was a third thing Fletcher had hidden. Something worse than the rerouted message. Something that would reframe every decision Reese had made in the last 16 months and leave him standing in the truth of what his silence had actually cost. Ivy Langston had agreed to this engagement for 3 reasons. The first was business. The Langston family's real estate portfolio overlapped with Callaway Group's San Francisco holdings in ways that made a formal alliance strategically valuable. The second was convenience. Reese was not a difficult man to be engaged to. He was private, he was fair, and he had never once pretended to love her, which she found considerably more respectful than the men who had lied. The third reason she had never admitted, even to herself, was simpler. She was 30 years old, and she was tired of explaining to her family why someone with her credentials and her appearance had not yet settled into the expected shape of a life. Reese was a structure. Ivy understood structures. What she had not understood, what she had not been told, was that she was the final piece of a structure Fletcher Gaines had been building for 19 months. That the engagement had been proposed on Fletcher's recommendation, timed and positioned to create exactly the kind of permanent entanglement that would make Reese Callaway too committed to a public arrangement to absorb any disruption. Any disruption like, for instance, a pediatric nurse with 2 gray-eyed infants. Ivy had seen the woman in the ballroom. She was observant by professional habit, and she had noticed the children's eyes before Reese had turned around. She had done the same arithmetic he had done, and she had arrived at the same answer approximately 3 seconds faster. She had said nothing. She had waited. This morning, Fletcher called her. He explained smoothly and with great warmth that the situation required some management. He suggested that Ivy might want to retain a family attorney, not for herself, but to explore what options existed regarding the children's paternity claim. Preemptively, he said, just to protect the engagement. Ivy listened. When he was finished, she said, Did you know about those children before last night? A half-second pause. Of course not. Ivy was a very good attorney. She knew what a half-second pause meant. I'll think about it, she said, and ended the call. She sat for a long time. Then she picked up a different phone and called a number in the FBI's San Francisco field office. A number she had, because Ivy Langston was the kind of woman who maintained professional relationships with everyone, including federal investigators. She did not tell them everything yet, but she told them enough to open a file. And then she sent Reese Calloway a single text message. We need to speak. Not about what you think. About Fletcher. Declan drove to Nora's apartment on a Tuesday evening with a folder and a thermos of coffee because he had correctly guessed that she would not offer him any. She opened the door in scrubs. She still wore them even on leave, he noticed, the way some people wear their uniforms as armor, and looked at the folder in his hand. Come in, she said. Don't sit on the left side of the couch. Maya threw up on it this morning and I haven't had time to deal with it. He sat on the right side. Nora stood across from him at the kitchen counter and listened as he laid it out. The relay server, the rerouted message, the 16-month timeline. He placed the documentation in front of her in order. Technical records, phone logs, a server access report that showed clearly which internal account had rerouted her 2 a.m. message on October 15th. Fletcher Gaines's credential key. Nora looked at the documents for a long time. He got rid of my message, she said finally, and Reese never received it. No. She was quiet. In the back room, Cole made a sound in his sleep and then went quiet again. There's more, Declan said. Tell me. 3 months ago, Reese found an inconsistency in the documents Fletcher originally used to convince him you were a corporate threat. He knew something was wrong. He hired an outside investigator. Nora looked up. 3 months ago. And he still didn't come to me. Declan met her eyes and did not look away, because she deserved that. No, he didn't. Not yet. There was a second reason. Something he found that complicated it further. Something about the night his sister died. Nora's face changed. Clara. Declan paused. You remember her name? I was the intake nurse on her unit that night. Her voice was steady, but her hands had gone still on the counter. I didn't know who she was. I had 3 critical patients and I was student clinical staff. I barely looked up from my charts. I wrote her down as Clara C. in my own notes. Reese thought you recognized him, that you approached him intentionally. Because of his sister. Nora looked at the ceiling. Then she went to the closet and came back with a battered clinical notebook. Burgundy cover, 2017, written on the spine in black marker. She opened it to a specific page and put it on the counter in front of him. October 14th, 2017. Clara C., 19. Traumatic injury, admitted 2104. Intake completed. The notation beside Nora's signature, also, patient Eli M., 4, past 2131, hard night. Declan photographed every page. Nora stood at the counter watching him work, arms crossed, expression unreadable. The particular stillness of someone who has practiced not showing their hand. This proves you didn't know who he was, Declan said. It proves I was looking at my chart and crying over a different patient, Nora said. Which is not quite the same thing, but it's close enough. She paused. Does he know I had this? No, he doesn't know any of this. You haven't told him about the notebook. I wanted to talk to you first. Nora was quiet for a moment. Then, Mr. Marsh, Why are you doing this? You work for him. Declan put his phone down. I work for him. But I've been watching Fletcher Gaines operate inside that organization for 12 months. And what he did to you. He stopped, started again. He used a relay I helped build to intercept your message. Indirectly, my system was the weapon. I should have caught it sooner. It was not quite an apology, but it was honest. Nora Callahan seemed to recognize honesty on instinct. What do you need from me? She asked. Your testimony, your clinical notebook, a recorded statement about the night of October 14th, 2017. What you saw, what you didn't see, what you wrote down, and any documentation you have of the original text messages from October of last year. The ones he never received. Nora went to her bedroom. She came back with her phone and a small external drive. I screenshot everything, she said. Force of habit. When someone goes silent on you without explanation, you want evidence that it happened the way you remember it, not the way you might eventually convince yourself it did. She handed him the drive. There's one more thing, Declan said carefully. When I show this to Reese, the notebook, the screenshots, all of it, he is going to want to come to you. Not with lawyers, not through official channels. Him, personally. Nora said nothing. What do you want me to tell him? She looked at the kitchen light above the counter, the one she always left on. Tell him that I'm not hiding from anyone, she said. Tell him he can come, but tell him to come as himself, not as Callaway Group, not as an apology strategy, not as a check. Just him. She paused, then, and tell him the twins like music, Cole especially. He has apparently very strong opinions about what counts as good. We're still working out his criteria. Declan sent the photographs at 11 p.m. Reese was in his office on the 22nd floor. He had dismissed his last meeting an hour ago and had not turned on the overhead lights. He was working by the glow of his MacBook Pro in the city below, which was a habit from the years before he could afford a real office, when the window had been his only light source. He opened the photographs. He read the entry 3 times. Clara C., 19. Traumatic injury, admitted 2104. Intake completed. And then beside Nora's signature. Also, patient Eli M., 4, past 2131. Hard night. She had been crying over a different child. She had not known who he was. She had not looked up from her charts. She had been a student nurse, overwhelmed, with 3 critical cases and a 4-year-old boy who did not make it. And she had written it all down in a burgundy notebook because she was the kind of person who wrote things down. He sat with that for a long time. Outside, the city made its low, continuous sound. He thought about the 16 months he had spent operating on the assumption that the woman he loved had been using him. He thought about the decision he had made to protect himself by staying silent, by letting the professional distance grow, by agreeing to the engagement Fletcher had recommended, because it was structured and clear and did not require him to trust anyone. He thought about Nora in that elevator, holding 2 children, telling him to let the doors close. He had let them close, and she had been right to make him. He picked up his phone and called Fletcher Gaines's number, not to speak. He let it ring once, and then he ended the call, a signal they had used for years, a system that meant, we need to meet now, in person. He had used it for crises before. Fletcher would come, and Reese would be ready. He sent Declan a single reply. Have everything you have on Gaines ready for 8 a.m. tomorrow. Call the FBI contact. Tell them it's active. Then he sent a second message. not to Declan, to a number he had not contacted in 16 months. It said, "I know I don't have the right to ask for anything. I'm not asking for anything. I just want you to know I read the notebook. I understand now what I did not understand then. That's all." 3 minutes later, a reply arrived. It said, "Cole threw his cereal at the wall this morning. He seemed very satisfied with himself. I thought you should know that about him." Fletcher Gaines arrived at the Callaway Group offices at 8:14 a.m. wearing his best suit. That was the tell, Declan noted later. Fletcher always dressed for the version of a meeting he expected. He expected a negotiation. He came dressed to win one. What he found was a conference room with 4 people he had not anticipated. Reese at the head of the table, Declan to his right, an FBI field agent named Torres to Declan's right, and Ivy Langston at the far end. Composed, sharp, with a legal pad in front of her, and the specific expression of a woman who had decided to burn the building down rather than remain inside it. Fletcher stopped in the doorway. "Sit down, Fletcher," Reese said. Fletcher sat. The next 40 minutes were not a negotiation. They were a presentation. Declan walked through the relay server documentation, the credential key, the timestamp, the rerouted message. Agent Torres walked through a separate investigation that had begun, as it turned out, 4 months ago, when an audit of the Callaway Foundation's charitable fund had revealed a $4.2 million discrepancy in the pediatric care endowment. The discrepancy traced to a series of transfers. The transfers traced to an account held in Fletcher Gaines's name through 2 shell LLCs registered in Delaware. He had been skimming a children's charity for 3 years. Fletcher's attorney, who he had called the moment he sat down, advised him to say nothing. Fletcher looked at the documentation in front of him. He looked at Reese. He looked at Ivy Langston, who looked back with the calm of someone who had already done the one thing that mattered. She had been the witness. She had testified to what she heard on the phone, the half-second pause, the management recommendation, the word preemptively. "I want a deal," Fletcher said. "You'll have to discuss that with Agent Torres," Reese said. "I'm not involved in that part." "Reese." 19 years, Fletcher. Reese's voice had not risen. It never did. "I want you to understand that I am not angry. I am finished. There is a difference." Fletcher was escorted from the building by 2 agents. He walked through the lobby in his best suit, past the front desk where he had worked for 19 years, and out through the glass doors onto Market Street. The story ran on the business page of the San Francisco Chronicle by noon. Callaway Group CFO Fletcher Gaines arrested in federal fraud investigation. The pediatric ward at UCSF received an emergency wire transfer of $4.2 million from the Callaway Foundation that same afternoon. The exact amount stolen, returned with interest, and designated in perpetuity to the Nursing Staff Development Fund. Reese texted on a Thursday morning. It said, "Prospect Park, 10 a.m. I won't bring anyone. You don't have to bring anyone either. But if you bring the twins, I will understand that Cole has opinions about music, and I will try to respect that." Nora read it 3 times. She told herself she was going because she needed to know the logistics, the legal framework, the custody arrangement, the terms of whatever formal structure was going to organize the next 18 years of her life. She was very good at telling herself practical things. She put Cole in the carrier and Maya in the stroller and walked 6 blocks to the park. Reese was already there. He was sitting on a bench near the fountain, in jeans and a dark jacket, no suit. No Mont Blanc pen, no phone visible. He looked like a man who had made a deliberate decision about how he wanted to show up, and had dressed accordingly. He stood when he saw her. "Thank you for coming," he said. Nora stopped a few feet away. "I told myself this was about logistics." "It can be," he said, "if that's what you need it to be." Cole spotted the fountain and made an enthusiastic sound. Maya was already asleep against the stroller padding, one arm flung over her head. Nora looked at Reese. "Say what you came to say," she said. He said it simply, without performance, which was the only way she would have believed it. He told her about the documents, about the moment he had seen them and the choice he had made to believe them. He told her about the investigation he had started 3 months ago. He told her about the notebook and what it had done to every assumption he had built. He told her that he was sorry, not in the way that sorry sounds when it means please forgive me, in the way it sounds when it means I understand exactly what I did, and there is no version of this where what I did was acceptable. Nora listened. Cole grabbed the edge of her jacket. "I'm not asking you to do anything," Reese said. "I'm not here with a plan. I just needed to say this to your face." She looked at him for a long time. "I know," she said. "I read your message, the one you sent at 11 p.m. He nodded. "You should meet them properly," Nora said. "Not today, but soon." It was not forgiveness. It was not a plan. It was a door left open 1 inch, and Reese Calloway, who had spent 16 months in the wrong room, understood exactly what an open door meant. Ivy called off the engagement on a Friday. She did not do it dramatically. She did not do it with a press release or a public statement or a meeting with Reese's communications team. She called Reese directly, on his personal cell, at 9 a.m. "I'm going to decline to continue the engagement," she said. "I understand," Reese said. "I want you to know that I'm not doing this because of the woman or the children," Ivy said carefully. "I'm doing this because I have spent the last 6 months aware, on some level, that this was not a real thing between us. And I think we both deserve better than an arrangement that serves everyone's interests except the actual human ones." Reese was quiet for a moment. "That's a gracious way to put it," he said. "I'm a gracious person." A pause. "And I want you to know, I'm the one who called Agent Torres. Not because I owe that woman anything, but because Fletcher Gaines lied to me the same way he lied to you. And I do not allow people to use me as a component in someone else's architecture." "I know," Reese said. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. I did it for myself." Another pause, and then something shifted in her voice, just slightly, like a window opening. She held those children with extraordinary steadiness in a ballroom full of people after seeing your face for the first time in 16 months. I noticed. Reese said nothing. "Make it right," Ivy said. "Not as a transaction. Actually right." She ended the call. She flew to New York that evening, took a partner position at a firm on Park Avenue that she had been considering for 2 years, and did not look back. The Langston-Calloway business overlap was quietly restructured over the following quarter through legal channels, professionally and without conflict. She had dinner alone at the River Cafe that first New York evening, ordered a glass of wine she actually wanted, and looked at the Manhattan skyline and thought that it was possible she had just made the first truly unscheduled decision of her adult life. She found that she did not mind it. 6 months later, she would be engaged again, to a musician she met at a Brooklyn gallery opening, who had no idea who the Langstons were, and found this genuinely puzzling when she explained it. She would find this quality in him almost unbearably refreshing. The first Saturday came 3 weeks after the park. Reese arrived at 9 a.m. with coffee from the place on Valencia, Nora's order, which he had looked up from a receipt she had once left on his kitchen counter 2 years ago and apparently never forgotten. He also brought a small board book about trucks, which he had purchased the night before with the specific anxiety of a person who has never bought a child's gift and is acutely aware of this. Nora opened the door, looked at the coffee, looked at the book. "The book is good," she said. "Cole has strong opinions about vehicles." Cole confirmed this immediately by grabbing the book with both hands and carrying it to the center of the living room floor, where he sat down and began paging through it with complete seriousness. Reese sat on the floor. This had not been a plan. It had simply been the nearest available surface to his son. He folded himself down, suit jacket and all, and Cole looked up from the truck book and regarded him for a long moment. Then he put the book in Reese's lap. "He wants you to read it," Nora said from the kitchen doorway. Reese looked at the book. He looked at his son. "Okay," he said. He read the truck book. Cole sat beside him and pointed at things. Maya woke up from her nap and crawled over to investigate and promptly sat on Reese's foot, which seemed to satisfy her completely. Reese read the truck book a second time, because Cole pointed at it again. Nora stood in the kitchen drinking her coffee and watching the man who controlled half the private capital in San Francisco read about dump trucks to a 14-month-old who had Cole's hair and Reese's eyes, and she felt something shift very quietly inside her chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Forgiveness was a longer road, and she knew that about herself, but something that was the beginning of the road. Later, after Reese had left, June called. "How was it?" "He read the truck book twice," Nora said, "and Cole fell asleep on him." June said nothing for a moment. "Nora," June said finally, her voice very gentle, "I think that might be the beginning of something." And Nora, standing in her kitchen with the light on and both children asleep, did not argue. Nora went back to the ward 6 weeks after the administrative review was closed. The closure was formal and complete. The complaint was found to be externally generated, and without merit. The record was expunged, and Dr. Annan shook her hand and said, with the careful understatement of a hospital administrator who had been in several difficult conversations lately, that the ward was glad to have her back. June hugged her in the hallway for 10 seconds. The 7-year-old in room 14 had a new nurse covering his case, who had not yet learned the cracker preference. Nora corrected this on her first shift back. 2 months later, Nora submitted a proposal to the UCSF Pediatric Ward Administration. It was 12 pages. She had written it between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays at the kitchen table after the twins were asleep. It proposed the creation of a structured music therapy rotation for pediatric patients under 18 months, built around existing research, budgeted carefully, and designed to be run by nursing staff with supplemental funding. She had identified the supplemental funding source herself, the Nursing Staff Development Fund within the Callaway Foundation endowment. She had not told Reese she was doing this. She had simply read the fund's public mandate and determined that her proposal met it. The proposal was approved in 6 weeks. She named the program after no one. She gave it a functional title, the UCSF Infant Music Integration Program. She did not want it to be about a story or a person. She wanted it to be about the work. The day the first session ran, a volunteer musician with a guitar, 4 infants, 3 parents, and June in the corner trying very hard not to cry. Nora stood in the doorway and watched Cole's assessment play out in real time, because she had brought the twins in to observe. Cole was riveted. Maya tried to eat the musician's guitar strap. Reese came that day. Nora had told him about it. He stood beside her in the doorway and watched, and did not say anything, because he had learned, in the month since the park, that Nora's important moments did not require commentary. They required presence. After the session, one of the parents stopped Nora in the hallway and said quietly that it was the first time her daughter had been calm in 3 weeks. Nora nodded. She thanked her. She walked back to the nursing station and sat down and thought, I built that. That exists because I made it exist, and no one can take it back. It was October, a year nearly to the week from the gala at the St. Regis. They were in Prospect Park again. The same bench near the fountain. Different season, same gray sky, but colder now, leaves down. Cole in a red coat that made him easy to track across the grass. Maya was in Reese's arms. She had recently decided that Reese was a satisfactory mode of transportation and had stopped protesting when he picked her up. Cole remained slightly skeptical of being carried, but had warmed considerably to sitting beside him, particularly when trucks were involved. Reese had been coming on Saturdays for 9 months. He had read the truck book so many times he had it memorized. He had attended both twins' checkups. He had learned which side of the couch had the unreliable spring. He had been present, not dramatically, not with grand gestures, but consistently, which was the only currency that meant anything to Nora. She was watching Cole run at the fountain when Reese said, I know I don't have the right to ask this. You've started 2 sentences that way, Nora said. The first one was the text message. The first one was an easier thing to ask. She looked at him. He was not in a suit. He almost never wore a suit on Saturdays anymore. He had a ring in his jacket pocket. She did not know about it yet, but he had been carrying it for 3 weeks, waiting for a moment that felt true instead of strategic. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he said. I know that's a longer thing. I'm not asking you to pretend the last 16 months were something other than what they were. He paused. I'm asking if there is a version of what we could be, not what we were, but something new that you want to find out about. Nora was quiet for a moment, a long moment. You'd have to be in it fully, she said. Not Callaway Group. Not a version of you that's managing something. You. And I keep my job. I keep the program. I keep the Tuesday nights where I read on the kitchen floor. I would never. I know, she said. I just needed to say it. Ask me again in the spring, she said, and bring a ring small enough to wear with gloves. I have to be practical. And then, because she was Nora Callahan, she smiled, not a big smile, just the real kind, and called Cole away from the fountain before he soaked his shoes entirely. The wedding was on a Saturday in April, Mission District. A church small enough that everyone present could see each other's faces. 62 people. June Nakamura in a green dress, serving as maid of honor, who had already cried twice before the ceremony began and was not apologizing for either instance. Declan Marsh beside Reese, standing as he always did, steady, watchful, the kind of man who was good at being in the right place. Cole wore a tiny suit and fell asleep 12 minutes into the ceremony. Maya wore a dress with ducks on it because she had pointed to it in the store with such conviction that no other argument was possible. Nora walked in on her own, not because there was no one to walk beside her. She had June. She had Dr. Anand, who had asked permission to attend. She had 32 pediatric patients she was not supposed to mention in her vows, but thought of anyway. She walked in on her own because that was how she had done the last 2 years, on her own, building forward. and the walk down the aisle was the honest continuation of that. Reese watched her come. He did not look at her the way men look at women in movies, like they are seeing something extraordinary. He looked at her the way you look at someone you know, which is rarer and more permanent. When Maya started crying at the ring exchange, the whole church laughed. Cole slept through it. Nora did not write vows. She had thought about it for weeks and finally told Reese, "I am not good at performing things I mean." What she said instead, quietly, so only he could hear, "I choose this, today, and I'll choose it again tomorrow. That was enough. Here is what I want you to take with you." Marcus Aurelius wrote that a man does not stumble because the road is difficult. He stumbles because he stopped looking at where he was walking. Nora Callahan looked at where she was walking every single day for 16 months. She did not stop. Not when the money ran out, not when the job was taken, not when the man she loved walked into a ballroom with someone else's ring on his finger. She looked ahead. She built. She showed up at 4:58 every morning because two people needed her to, and because she needed herself to. That is not a fairy tale. That is the actual shape of surviving, and it is more powerful than any rescue. Now, here is my question for you, and I want you to really think about it. When Nora let those elevator doors close, was that strength, or was it one of the hardest things she ever did? Comment below with doors if you think she made the right call. Or tell me, what would you have done differently? If this story moved you, hit like and subscribe to Love Always Wins. Part 2, Cole's first word, and the moment Reese heard it, is coming next week. Type Cole in the comments if you want to be here for it. Love always wins here. See you next time. This story is a work of original fiction created entirely for entertainment and emotional storytelling purposes. All characters, including Nora Callahan, Reese Calloway, Fletcher Gaines, Ivy Langston, Declan Marsh, and June Nakamura, are fictional and do not represent any real individuals, living or deceased. All organizations, locations used in dramatic context, and events depicted in this narrative are fictional constructs. Any resemblance to actual persons, real events, or real organizations is entirely coincidental. This video does not claim to document real events or real relationships. It is an original dramatic fiction script in the tradition of dark romance storytelling, created to entertain, inspire emotional reflection, and provide a safe space for viewers to process their own life experiences through narrative. Brand names and real locations mentioned incidentally exist solely as part of authentic American cultural setting and carry no promotional intent. This channel believes in honest, transparent storytelling. Every story here is fiction. Every emotion it creates is real.